Every morning, without fail, Emma woke up to the same quiet visitor waiting patiently outside her front door. At first, she thought it was just a coincidence, maybe a neighborhood dog wandering by. But as days passed, the small, scruffy dog became a fixture, sitting calmly on the porch, his eyes fixed on the door as if waiting for someone. Emma lived alone in a cozy little house at the end of a quiet street. She loved her peaceful mornings filled with sunlight and the soft sounds of birds outside her window. But this dog, who appeared like clockwork each day, changed the rhythm of her mornings in ways she couldn't explain. The dog wasn't like others she had seen before. He wasn't playful or loud. There were no excited barks or wagging tails. Instead, he was still and patient, almost somber. His fur was matted and dusty, and his eyes carried a depth of sadness that made Emma's heart ache. Some mornings, Emma would peek through the window just to see if he was there. And there he was, always sitting in the same spot, near the doorframe, as if he was waiting for her to step outside. But when she did, he never moved closer. Instead, he watched her with a quiet longing, as if afraid to come forward but too loyal to leave. The first time Emma tried to call him inside, the dog flinched and backed away. It was clear he had been on his own for a long time. Yet, despite his fear, he didn't run away. He stayed close, waiting patiently every day, silently asking for something she couldn't yet understand. Emma was a soft-hearted woman who had always loved animals, but never imagined she'd find herself caring for a stray dog. At first, she thought maybe the dog was hungry or thirsty, so she left a small bowl of water and some scraps outside the door. The dog approached the bowl cautiously, drinking slowly, and then sitting back down quietly, never letting Emma get too close. Her curiosity grew stronger. Why did this dog choose her? Why did he come to her door every day without fail, yet never try to cross the threshold? Emma began to think of the dog as a kind of guardian spirit, a silent visitor who somehow filled the lonely spaces in her life. Sometimes, as she got ready for work or stepped out to check the mail, Emma would speak softly to the dog. "Hi there, friend," she would say gently, hoping her voice might comfort him. But he only blinked slowly in response, his gaze steady but distant, as if holding on to a secret too heavy for words. Her neighbors noticed too. One afternoon, as Emma sat on her porch, a young boy from down the street stopped to ask, "Does that dog belong to you?" Emma shook her head, smiling sadly. "No, but he visits every day. I think he's waiting for someone." People often think dogs are simple creatures, but Emma had begun to realize that sometimes they carry stories heavier than we can imagine. This dog was more than just a stray. He was patient, loyal, and something in his eyes told her he had been waiting a long time for something or someone. The mornings turned into weeks, and the dog's presence became a comforting, if mysterious, part of Emma's routine. She found herself looking forward to seeing him, wondering if today would be the day he'd finally trust her enough to come closer. One particularly chilly morning, Emma wrapped herself in a thick scarf and stepped outside with a warm blanket in hand. She sat quietly beside the dog, who didn't move but didn't run either. For the first time, Emma felt like the distance between them might finally begin to shrink. The dog rested his head on his paws, eyes half closed, but still alert. Emma gently draped the blanket over his back, careful not to startle him. A small, hopeful spark flickered inside her, the kind of hope born from seeing something fragile yet brave, waiting patiently for a chance to heal. That day, Emma decided, she would do everything she could to uncover the story behind the dog who waited for her every morning. Because some visitors don't just appear by accident. Some come with a purpose wrapped in quiet loyalty and a heartbreaking past. And Emma was ready to listen. After those first chilly mornings, Emma's curiosity about the dog grew stronger with each passing day. She began to think of him not as a stray but as a visitor with a story, a silent soul reaching out without words. But the dog's cautious nature reminded her he wasn't used to kindness or closeness. Any sudden movement, any loud noise, and he would retreat a few steps, eyes wide with uncertainty. Emma wanted to break down those invisible walls. She started by sitting quietly on the porch while the dog ate, careful not to make any sudden gestures. She spoke softly, telling him stories about her day or reading aloud from a book she loved. Her voice was gentle, soothing, like a quiet promise that she meant no harm. Slowly, over the course of a week, the dog began to inch closer, barely noticeable, but enough to make Emma's heart race with hope. She learned to watch for the moments, when he was relaxed, when his tail gave a faint wag or his eyes softened just a little. One afternoon, Emma left a thicker blanket folded neatly by the door. The dog sniffed it carefully, then curled up on it as if accepting her gift without words. It was a small victory, but to Emma it meant the world. This fragile creature, who had been alone and wary for so long, was starting to trust her. Neighbors began to notice the quiet bond growing between Emma and the stray dog. Mrs. Callahan, who lived 2 doors down, smiled knowingly when she saw the dog waiting by Emma's porch. "He's a special one," she said once, her voice soft but full of meaning. Emma didn't know it yet, but Mrs. Callahan's words held a deeper truth she was about to discover. Despite the growing connection, the dog's past weighed heavily on Emma's mind. She wondered where he came from and why he had chosen her. Doorstep is a place to wait. Each day she scanned the neighborhood for any sign of an owner or someone who might be looking for him. No one called out for him, and no one seemed to claim the scruffy, gentle visitor. The dog, whom Emma had started calling Max, though she didn't know if that was his real name, showed no interest in other people. When children from the neighborhood ran by excited and loud, Max would quietly slip away to a shadowed corner and watch from afar. He was loyal to something Emma didn't yet understand. One morning, Emma brought out a small leash and collar, hoping Max might let her try. She approached slowly, kneeling on the porch, and held out the collar with a soft voice. Max sniffed it carefully, then pulled back as if remembering a painful memory. Emma didn't push. She simply sat beside him, rubbing his ears gently. "We'll take it slow," she whispered, "whenever you're ready." That afternoon, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky orange, Max rested his head on Emma's knee. It was the first time he had let her touch him without flinching. Emma's heart swelled with a mix of joy and sadness. She could feel the loneliness he carried, the years of wandering, waiting, and hoping for something lost. She decided to bring out her phone and started taking pictures. Max wasn't just a stray dog. He was a living mystery, a reminder that sometimes the quietest souls hold the deepest stories. Emma knew she had to find out more. Her next step was to ask around the neighborhood. She showed the pictures to people and posted them on community groups, hoping someone might recognize Max. But no one came forward. It was as if he had appeared from nowhere, tied to a past no one spoke about. One evening, after a long day of searching, Emma sat on her porch with Max curled at her feet, the quiet comfort of the dog's presence wrapped around her like a warm blanket. She whispered, "We'll figure this out together, okay?" Max looked up at her with eyes that seemed to say thank you, as if understanding that he had finally found someone who cared, not just for him, but for the story he carried in silence. And in that moment, Emma realized that this hesitant friendship was about more than just kindness. It was about healing 2 souls who had both been waiting for a chance to belong. As the days slipped by, Emma's bond with Max grew stronger, yet the mystery surrounding him only deepened. She couldn't shake the feeling that Max was tied to something or someone in her neighborhood. His quiet loyalty, the way he came every morning at the exact same time, and his refusal to trust anyone but her made Emma certain his story wasn't ordinary. One crisp morning, as the sun spilled soft golden light across the street, Emma noticed something new. Max didn't settle at the porch right away. Instead, he paced slowly back and forth, his nose close to the ground, tracking an invisible scent only he could detect. His tail twitched in a way that suggested hope mixed with frustration. Emma followed his gaze down the street, trying to see what had caught his attention. A few houses away, a small garden bloomed with bright flowers, and beyond that, the street curved gently toward the park. Max's ears perked up, and he started moving purposefully in that direction, looking back at Emma as if inviting her to follow. Hesitant but curious, Emma grabbed her jacket and stepped outside. Max walked slowly, occasionally stopping to sniff around, then looking back to make sure Emma was still with him. It felt like a silent invitation to uncover a secret he'd been guarding for a long time. As they reached the park, Emma noticed an elderly woman sitting on a bench nearby feeding birds. The woman's eyes caught Max immediately, and she gasped softly. Emma's heart skipped a beat. Was this the answer she had been waiting for? "Is that Max?" the woman asked gently, her voice trembling with a mixture of surprise and sadness. Emma nodded, stepping closer. "Yes, he's been visiting me every day." "Do you know him?" The woman nodded slowly. "He belonged to my husband," she said, wiping her eyes. "Max was our family dog, but after my husband passed away, Max disappeared. We thought we'd lost him forever." Emma listened carefully, as the woman, Mrs. Callahan, told her story. Max had been a loyal companion to her late husband, a constant presence through years of happiness and hardship. After her husband's death, the dog had vanished, and the family was heartbroken. "I think Max has been searching for the last place he remembers," Mrs. Callahan said, voice soft but filled with a quiet strength. "He's been coming here, to the house where our daughter used to live." Emma's mind raced. She hadn't known this before, but now the pieces began to fall into place. The house she called home was once the family home of Mrs. Callahan's daughter, who had passed away in a tragic accident. Max wasn't just a stray. He was a dog holding on to memories of a family he loved deeply. As Max lay at Emma's feet, his eyes bright with recognition, Emma felt a wave of emotion crash over her. Here was a dog who had lost so much but never given up. He had spent years wandering, waiting, and now, somehow, he had found his way back. Mrs. Callahan reached out to gently stroke Max's head. "He's a brave dog," she whispered. "He's been loyal to a love that never died." Emma looked at Max, her heart swelling with empathy. The dog wasn't just visiting her. He was trying to reconnect with a part of his past, a family, and a love that had shaped his life. Every day he came to her door because he was holding on to hope, even after all this time. Determined to help Max find peace, Emma promised Mrs. Callahan she would care for him and try to give him the home he deserved. She felt a deep responsibility, not just for the dog's physical well-being, but for the emotional journey he had been on. On the walk back home, Max seemed lighter, more at ease. He stayed close to Emma, occasionally looking up with a soft expression. That felt like gratitude. The quiet mystery of the stray dog was no longer just a puzzle. It was a story of love, loss, and the incredible bond between a dog and the family he never stopped loving. Emma realized that sometimes the deepest connections come from the most unexpected places. Max's daily visits weren't random. They were a message of hope and resilience. And now, Emma was part of that message. As they reached the porch, Max settled down in his usual spot, but this time something was different. The waiting didn't feel lonely anymore. It felt like the beginning of something new, a chance to heal old wounds and build a future together. Emma smiled softly, knowing that tomorrow Max would return, and she would be waiting. The days after the park meeting with Mrs. Callahan felt different for Emma. She carried the weight of Max's story. In her heart, the puzzle pieces finally beginning to fit together. But what truly surprised her was how the whole neighborhood seemed to be quietly watching, waiting for the next chapter of this strange, beautiful connection to unfold. One cool afternoon, Emma was watering her small garden when Mrs. Callahan approached her doorstep. Her eyes, usually so warm and kind, held something new, a mix of sadness and hope. "Emma," she began softly, "there's something else you should know." Emma invited her inside, sensing the importance of what Mrs. Callahan wanted to share. As they sat down in the cozy living room, Mrs. Callahan unfolded a story that Emma hadn't expected, but now seemed so crucial to understanding Max. "My daughter, Claire," Mrs. Callahan said, her voice catching for a moment. "She lived in this very house before you. She was a bright, kind soul, full of life and dreams. Max was her best friend. They were inseparable." Emma's heart tightened. The idea that Max was not just a stray but connected to the very walls of her home made the dog's daily visits even more poignant. "What happened to her?" Emma asked gently. Mrs. Callahan hesitated, then explained. "Claire died in a tragic accident a few years ago. It shattered our family. Max. He disappeared soon after. No one knew where he went. We feared he was lost for good." Emma felt tears prick her eyes as she looked at Max resting quietly by the door. Suddenly, everything about his behavior, the waiting, the cautious loyalty, made heartbreaking sense. Max wasn't just wandering. He was searching for Claire. Mrs. Callahan's hands trembled as she pulled out a faded photograph from her purse. In the picture, a young woman with a bright smile knelt next to a golden retriever, the same dog Emma had come to know. "This was Claire and Max," she said softly. "The bond they shared was unlike any other." Emma took the photo carefully, studying the familiar dog beside the girl. The warmth in Claire's eyes seemed to reach out through the years, connecting. Past and present, Emma realized that Max's daily visits to her porch were more than routine. They were a silent tribute to a love that even time couldn't erase. As Mrs. Callahan continued, she shared memories of Claire's kindness, her laughter, and the way Max would follow her everywhere. After Claire's death, Max didn't belong to anyone anymore. He was lost and heartbroken, but somehow he found his way back here, to where he felt closest to her. Emma looked down at Max, who lifted his head and met her gaze. In that moment, the dog seemed to say so much without words: hope, loss, and a quiet determination that had carried him through years of loneliness. Mrs. Callahan smiled faintly through tears. "Thank you for caring for him, Emma. Max deserves a second chance, a home where he can feel safe again." Emma felt a surge of resolve. She would do everything in her power to give Max that home. The story of Max and Claire had woven itself into her life, and she no longer saw the dog as just a visitor, but as a living reminder of love's enduring power. That night, Emma sat by the window, watching Max sleep peacefully in his spot by the door. She thought about the invisible threads that connected people, places, and memories. Sometimes the past reached into the present in unexpected ways, through a dog who waited every day for someone long gone. The next morning, Emma decided to bring out an old scrapbook she had found in the attic after moving in. Inside were pictures of Claire and her family, notes and mementos that told the story of a life full of love, but cut short too soon. Max seemed to sense the importance of the moment. As Emma flipped through the pages, he stayed close, resting his head on her lap. Emma whispered, "We're in this together, Max. You're not alone anymore." The revelation of Max's connection to Claire transformed the way Emma saw her quiet visitor. No longer was he just a stray dog waiting by the door. He was a guardian of memories, a symbol of love that refused to fade, and Emma knew that their journey was only just beginning. After the conversation with Mrs. Callahan, Emma found herself drawn even deeper into the story that connected Max, Claire, and the house she now called home. It wasn't just about a stray dog anymore. It was about healing wounds she hadn't known existed, and piecing together a past that had quietly shaped the present. Curious and determined, Emma started to search for more clues about Claire and her family. She visited the local library and sifted through old newspapers and public records. With each discovery, a clearer picture began to emerge, a story of love, loss, and resilience. Emma learned that Claire had been a beloved member of the community, known for her kindness and gentle spirit. Friends and neighbors remembered her with warmth, recalling how she would volunteer at the animal shelter and bring joy wherever she went. Max had been her constant companion, always by her side through thick and thin. But tragedy had struck suddenly. A car accident had taken Claire's life, leaving the family shattered and the house empty. Max's disappearance after that only deepened the silence that settled over the neighborhood. As Emma pieced together the fragments of Claire's life, she felt an unexpected connection to the young woman she had never met. There was something about Claire's spirit, her compassion and quiet strength, that mirrored Emma's own heart. One afternoon, Emma returned to the house with a small box filled with mementos she had gathered. A framed photo of Claire with Max, some letters from friends, and a few of Claire's favorite books she had found at the library. She placed the box gently on the porch beside Max's usual spot. Max sniffed the box carefully, then settled down beside it, his eyes calm and steady. Emma reached out to stroke his fur and whispered, "This is your past, Max. We'll hold it, safe together." Mrs. Callahan visited often, sharing stories about Claire and the family. Each visit brought new pieces of the past to light, making Emma feel less like an outsider and more like a part of a living history. But even as Emma embraced the past, she knew she couldn't let it keep Max trapped in grief. Max had been waiting, for years, years filled with loneliness and loss. Now it was time for him to find peace. Emma took Max to the vet to make sure he was healthy. The vet was kind and gentle, praising Emma for her care. "He's lucky to have you," she said. "Max has been through a lot, but with love and patience, he'll heal." The days that followed were a blend of old memories and new beginnings. Max's routine changed little. He still came to the door each morning, but now he let Emma brush his fur and even wear a collar. Slowly, the walls around his heart started to crumble. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Emma sat on the porch with Max beside her. The sky was painted in soft pinks and purples, and the air smelled of blooming flowers. Emma felt a quiet sense of hope. "We're making a new story, Max," she said softly. "One where you're safe and loved and never alone." Max looked up at her, eyes shining with a trust that had taken years to build. In that moment, Emma understood that the past was not just a place of pain, but a foundation for healing. The journey wasn't over, but together they were ready to face whatever came next. With the past slowly unfolding and the truth about Max's connection to Claire revealed, Emma felt a growing sense of responsibility, not just to care for Max, but to help heal the invisible wounds that lingered in both their hearts. She realized that their journey was about more than just one dog or one house. It was about learning to trust again, to love again despite the pain of loss. Each morning, Max still appeared at the doorstep, but now he stayed longer, more comfortable in Emma's presence. She made sure he had fresh water, food, and a soft bed by the fireplace for the chilly nights. Sometimes she caught him gazing out the window, lost in thought, as if remembering moments from a life she was only beginning to understand. Emma began taking Max on gentle walks through the neighborhood park where Mrs. Callahan often joined them. The walks were slow and quiet at first, but over time Max's confidence grew. He sniffed at the blooming flowers, chased a curious squirrel, and even let out a soft bark of joy that made Emma smile. Mrs. Callahan often shared more memories of Claire during their walks, stories of laughter, kindness, and hope that made Claire feel alive again in their hearts. It was as if Max was carrying those memories with him, walking alongside a past that refused to be forgotten. One day, Emma found an old collar in the attic, worn but sturdy, with a small tag engraved with Claire's name. She carefully fastened it around Max's neck, feeling a bittersweet mix of sorrow and joy. Max didn't resist. Instead, he seemed to carry the weight of the moment with quiet dignity. As weeks passed, Emma noticed a change in herself as well. Caring for Max gave her a new purpose, a connection she hadn't expected to find. The loneliness that had once filled her home began to fade, replaced by a warm companionship that grew stronger every day. But healing wasn't always easy. Some nights, Max would whimper softly, his eyes reflecting shadows of a painful past. Emma would sit beside him, whispering soothing words, offering comfort through touch and presence. She knew that trust was fragile, built slowly over time, and she was willing to be patient. One rainy afternoon, Emma found herself lost in thought, watching Max sleep peacefully by the fire. She realized how much they had both changed. Two souls, brought together by fate, helping each other heal wounds that neither could face alone. The community around them also began to shift. Neighbors who once saw Max as just a stray now smiled warmly, stopping to say hello or offer treats. Max's story had become a quiet reminder of resilience and love, inspiring those who heard it. Emma's friends noticed the change in her too. She seemed lighter, more open, as if the invisible weight of loneliness had lifted. When she shared Max's story, they listened with tears in their eyes, touched by the depth of the bond between a woman and a dog. One evening, as Emma sat on the porch, Max settled into her lap with a contented sigh. The stars twinkled overhead, and the night was filled with a peaceful silence that spoke of hope and new beginnings. Emma whispered softly, "We've both been through so much, haven't we, Max? But we're here now, together." Max lifted his head and looked at her, eyes shining with a quiet trust that needed no words. In that moment, Emma knew that healing was not just about mending broken pieces. It was about creating something new from the fragments of the past. With patience, love, and the courage to face the unknown, they were building a future where neither of them would ever feel lost again. And for the first time in a long while, both Emma and Max felt truly at home. As spring unfolded, Emma and Max's bond deepened into something both beautiful and unbreakable. What had started as cautious visits to the doorstep transformed into daily routines filled with companionship, trust, and quiet joy. Each morning, Max would wait patiently for Emma to open the door. Sometimes he brought a small stick or a fallen flower, as if offering a gift, a gesture that touched Emma's heart deeply. She accepted these gifts with a smile, knowing that in his own way, Max was saying thank you. Emma took the time to learn Max's habits and moods. She noticed how his ears perked up at the sound of birds singing, or how his eyes sparkled when children played nearby. Max was slowly rediscovering the world he had lost, and Emma was honored to be part of that journey. One afternoon, Emma invited Mrs. Callahan to join them for tea. As they sat on the porch with Max resting comfortably between them, Mrs. Callahan shared more stories about Claire, stories filled with laughter, hope, and dreams that Claire had held close to her heart. Max was Claire's shadow, Mrs. Callahan said softly, her eyes misty with emotion. He followed her everywhere, loved her fiercely. It's no surprise he's been searching for her all this time. Emma looked at Max, feeling the weight of those words. She realized that in caring for Max, she was honoring a love story that transcended time, a story of loyalty and devotion that had survived even the darkest days. But the healing wasn't just for Max. Emma found herself changing too. The loneliness that had once shadowed her life began to lift, replaced by a sense of belonging and purpose. Max's gentle presence brought light into her days, a reminder that even in loss, there is hope. Together they started creating new memories. Emma introduced Max to the quiet pleasures of her world. Soft music on rainy days, walks through blooming gardens, and evenings spent watching the stars. Max responded with quiet affection. He leaned into Emma's touch, followed her with a wagging tail, and rested his head on her lap as if saying, "I'm home." Their story began to touch others as well. Neighbors who once kept their distance now stopped to greet Max by name. Children asked Emma to tell them stories about Claire and the loyal dog who never gave up hope. One weekend, Emma organized a small gathering in the park. Friends, neighbors, and Mrs. Callahan came together to celebrate Max and Claire's story, a reminder of love's power to heal and connect. As laughter and stories filled the air, Emma felt a deep gratitude. What had begun as a mysterious visit from a stray dog had blossomed into a community bound by kindness and remembrance. Yet, beneath the joy, Emma knew there was still work to be done. Max's past would always be a part of him, and healing was a journey without an end. But with every day, every shared moment, they moved closer to peace. One quiet evening, as Emma sat with Max on the porch, she whispered, "Thank you for trusting me, Max, for showing me how to love again." Max looked up, eyes bright with understanding. The silent bond between them spoke volumes, a promise that whatever the future held, they would face it together. And as the stars twinkled above, Emma knew that this bond, born from heartbreak and hope, was the greatest gift either of them had ever received. The seasons changed, and with each passing day, Emma and Max's story became a quiet legend in their little neighborhood, a testament to resilience, love, and the healing power of connection. Max was no longer just the stray dog who appeared at the door. He had become family, a living bridge between past and present. Emma often thought about how a simple act of kindness had transformed so many lives. What had begun with a dog waiting at her doorstep had grown into a journey filled with meaning and hope. Through Max, she had discovered the strength to face her own loneliness and open her heart again. One chilly autumn morning, Emma woke to find Max already waiting outside, his tail wagging gently. She opened the door with a smile and wrapped him in a warm embrace. "Come on, boy," she said softly. "Let's start today with a walk." As they strolled through the crisp air, Max led Emma to a small clearing in the park where wildflowers still bloomed despite the season. It was a quiet, peaceful place, a perfect spot for new memories. Mrs. Callahan joined them soon after, carrying a basket filled with fresh treats and a small photo album. "I thought we could celebrate Claire today," she said, her voice tender. "Remember her the way she lived, with joy and love." As they gathered in the clearing, neighbors arrived one by one, drawn by the story that had touched their hearts. Children carried homemade cards and friends brought flowers. The air buzzed with warmth, laughter, and a shared sense of community. Emma watched as Max moved among the crowd, his eyes bright and full of life. The dog who had once been lost and lonely now basked in the love surrounding him. For the first time, Emma saw not just a survivor, but a soul healed by care and kindness. Mrs. Callahan opened the photo album, and they all looked through images of Claire, her radiant smile, moments of happiness, and the bond she shared with Max. Tears mixed with smiles as stories were told, memories cherished and hearts mended. After the gathering, Emma took Max home, feeling a profound sense of peace. She knelt beside him and whispered, "This is just the beginning, Max. We have so much life to live, and I promise you'll never be alone again." Max rested his head on her knee, his eyes shining with trust and gratitude. Emma knew that their journey, filled with heartbreak, hope, and healing, had brought them both to a place where new beginnings were possible. Days turned into weeks, and the rhythm of their lives settled into a comforting pattern. Max no longer came to the door just to see Emma. He stayed with her, a constant companion. Their bond, forged through pain and patience, blossomed into unconditional love. Emma often thought about Claire and the legacy she had left behind, not just in photographs and memories, but in Max's unwavering loyalty and spirit. Through Max, Claire's love lived on, touching everyone who knew their story. As the sun set on another peaceful evening, Emma and Max sat on the porch, wrapped in the quiet glow of twilight. The world around them felt gentle and full of promise. Emma smiled and said softly, "We found each other, Max, and together we're going to make every day count." Max wagged his tail, the simple gesture saying everything words could not, and in that moment, Emma knew that sometimes the most unexpected visitors bring the greatest gifts, a chance to heal, to love, and to begin again.